Big news just dropped. President Trump just signed an executive order aimed to reshape college sports as we know it. And this is really insane. This move is going to affect recruiting, NIL deals, the transfer portal, you name it. It has massive implications for schools like Kansas State and Arizona State, and of course, conferences like the Big 12. Let's dive in and talk about it right here on this Locked On College Crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into this Locked On College Crossover, Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Sun Devils. I'm your host, Christian Rao, here with co-host and host of Locked On Sun Devils, Richie Bradshaw. And Richie, got a fun episode for you today. We're going to dive into this executive order that President Donald Trump has signed, why it's a huge deal, and why it is going to have some big implications for college football and all college sports as we know it going down the pipeline. So plenty to talk about, and what better way to talk about it than two of the best programs in the Big 12. Then we're going to talk about some position battles because fall camp is here. Obviously, the Big 12 preseason poll from Locked On Podcast Network, Sun Devils and Kansas State 1-2. So we got to talk about how both these teams get to Arlington, and it starts in fall camp. And then we'll finish the episode with what does a cupcake schedule really mean, and why the Big 12 doesn't have it, and why some of these other power schools are really just crap in the bed, can I say. So let's talk about that on this episode. Before we do so, this episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you bet just $5, Richie, $150. $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Richie, I want to get you speaking here, but there's just a lot to cover. And let me tell you about this lead quote from Donald Trump. He says, quote, "It is common sense that college sports are not and should not be professional sports, and my administration will take action accordingly." I want to unpack what that really means, but these key points of this executive order was it limits booster-driven NIL deals. It still allows fair market NIL compensation, directs agencies to determine whether college athletes are employees, mandates protections and continued support for non-revenue and women's sports. It requires federal agencies to submit formal regular plans within 30 days. All that together is basically saying they don't want pay for play anymore. They don't want Donald Trump, the executive branch. They want to make sure that college sports gets back. And they named this Donald Trump Saves College Sports. I don't know if we can go that far.
It's hilarious.
It's a very funny name. It's on brand. I think you could say that.
Yes.
Either way, what do you think about this executive order? The fact that, I love that dance, by the way. What do you think about the fact that they want to get away from this pay-for-play NIL? They want to make sure that these NIL deals actually matter. Fair market price is something they continue to say.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing is I don't care that it's President Donald Trump that's doing it. I'm just happy that someone is stepping in with any kind of authority to kind of put down the, hey, we don't do pay for play, because NIL is here to stay. And we have the revenue sharing, we have the house settlement and everything. The players are going to get paid. I don't have a problem with that. I am pro pay the players, but I don't like the fact that you have these programs that have so much more power over the smaller schools that they're pulling guys. Like an example, there was an offensive tackle who played at Rice who was a stud going pro, and he got pulled, I think, to Ohio State this offseason. Isaiah World, star offensive tackle for Nevada, got a fat check from Oregon, and now he's going to Oregon. Like, that sucks. You don't have these guys who are lifers for a program anymore, and it's not really their fault. If someone calls you up and says, hey, we'll give you $2 million to come to this program, yeah, I'm probably going to that program. There's not a lot that's gonna tell me to turn down $2 million. That's generational wealth for a lot of these kids. And that's something that your bigger programs, your Ohio States and your Alabamas and your Georgias and your USCs, they provide that compared to your Oregon States, who get purged on a regular basis when they have good football players, let alone talking about your G5 schools or your FCS schools. Like, it's just so difficult to maintain the purity of college football where you have these kids that'll stay at a university forever. And the transfer portal is, hurt that as well. But it definitely has been we can call it what it is, a pay to play, essentially. Like, I feel like I'm playing a freemium app on my phone, and it's like, oh, well, I don't have to pay to, have a good time. But if I want all the features, if I want that eagle to help me knock out the Angry Birds, right? I got to pay for it, and that's something that really holds back a lot of college football programs from competing. So I love that anybody is stepping in to do it. It just so happened to be the president of the United States, who, not being political at all, very polarizing. So I'm curious how a lot of other college football fans feel.
Yeah, it just seems like super top heavy because it's coming from an executive order. That's where it comes to me. I'm, again, not political as well in my mind at all. Trump admin quote here, another one. Quote, absent guardrails to stop the madness and ensure a reasonable, balanced use of resources across collegiate athletic programs. Many college sports will soon cease to exist. If not, it's basically what they're saying. And I kind of goes with what you were saying. It's not against paying the players. And I think I'm right with you. I'm all for paying the players, but there's some sort of structure here, and that's what they're looking for. And I think that's what they're actually trying to stop. And I think we should get real here. I think that they're not trying to stop athletes from making money. They're trying to stop schools and boosters from using money like a recruiting hammer. You're making sure that the collectives are offering, they're trying to stop collectives from offering six-figure deals before the kids even step on campus. Like they're trying to stop transfers from getting offers that have nothing to do with the market value that they continue to talk about. And hopefully it stops athletes from bouncing for bags, right? Not for fit, not for development. It stops that person. So it's not just NIL they hate, because I think it's the complete opposite. I think it's the fact that NIL has turned into this, what's the word? Maybe like free agency with no rules. And they're trying to find some rules and some structure in this thing. So that's where my mind goes to with this. And I think it does matter. I think it's important, but I think we're going to see some major changes because we're finally starting to see some structure since this whole chaos began. So is the NIL chaos over? I think it finally might be, or at least is the right step, at least in the right direction, Richie. If they are employees, because this executive order also calls on the federals, the feds to out if student athletes are technically employees. So that's something to keep in mind. Are they technically employees? If that happens, if they think they're employees, the schools might owe salaries, union rights, labor protections. So it can get a lot more nasty and ugly in the future if they decide on that. But if they're not, and this is actually, from what I'm reading, this is the president's goal for them to not be considered employees, then the schools can avoid that mess and keep the current model alive. What do you think about that?
Well, that's something that I appreciate, because the other thing with college sports, and this is a lot of the previous generations, like my grandparents especially, view this as like turning it semi-pro and ruining the purity of college football, because you go to college for an education, you go there for loyalty, you want to represent, you want to be a lifer, all that stuff, and that's just really not existent anymore. You don't see a lot of Cade Klubniks who spend all of their time with one program. You see a lot of Sam Levitts who start somewhere and then they go to another program. You see a lot of guys who play for more than two programs. You've got guys who have been with legitimately like 5+ schools. Like, it's crazy. You just don't have that anymore. And I would love to get back to something at least closer to it, and taking away the ability to pluck these kids just by throwing a bag at them is a big deal. So something that I've gone to a lot over the offseason is Sam Levitt was asked at a charity event about, hey, did you get offers to leave? And he was like, yeah, I had a lot of money that was thrown at me. And he said, what's a few $100,000 when you're at a place you love that's going to get you ready for the next level? Which is still like, Sam, what do you mean, what's a few $100,000? You know what I would do with a few $100,000? A lot. But you don't have a lot of kids that have that mentality, right, wrong, or indifferent. And it's the boosters' ability to enable that that kind of surge that college football has seen, because it does feel, like you said, like free agency without any kind of limitations. Like there's not even a luxury cap or a luxury tax that goes with it when the Dodgers want to spend all their money and then defer the contracts, which is just a disgusting thing that I think baseball needs to handle. But that's not what we're here to talk about. It's also going to be a really interesting conversation how they want to handle the employee side of it, because that was one of the big issues that got started with all this is, well, now are they employees because they're getting paid? You go back to 2013, 2014, when the NCAA got busted because we don't sell jerseys for players with their last name on it. But if I go to a website and I type in Johnny Manziel jersey, wow, that's really weird that a number 2 Texas A&M jersey popped up for me. Like that's a lot of what really started all those problems. And now we've snowballed to this point and we're still trying to navigate what's the middle ground and all that. Hopefully this helps get us back towards the middle ground, because I think the biggest problem is you've just had such polar opposite sides of this. You had the side where the NCAA controlled everything, including being able to make money off of a player's name, image, likeness, and not give them a cut of it. But now you have the other side of it where the players are basically in control and the NCAA doesn't have teeth. No one is afraid of the NCAA. So you're hoping that you can find some kind of middle ground, and maybe this will be part of getting to that point, is starting to firmly establish roles and how much money you can distribute and all that good stuff. So to me, I think there's nothing but positives that should come out of this. There's always a chance for stuff to backfire, as there is with anything. But on the surface, I look at this and I'm just very, very pro for it, because I think in theory, this could get everything back on track. In theory, but that's just a theory.
Yeah, it could. And we could be talking about this on a Friday, and then by Monday, we could be seeing, courts saying back and trying to get this appealed and getting this taken back. So who knows what actually happens and how much actual jurisdiction that this executive order could actually have on college sports.
Right.
Here's one of the overlooked parts, though, that I thought was really interesting in this, because when you talk about NIL, when you talk about all this money, you immediately think about football. You immediately think about maybe not football, maybe basketball at the minimum. But this order actually still also protects the non-revenue sports. So we're talking wrestling, track, volleyball, tennis, you name it, the Olympic sports. There's a big focus on protecting them. And those are the sports that usually get sacrificed first when budgets get tight. So this is a direct counterpunch, in my opinion, to the fear that football and basketball would swallow everything else when it came to that settlement, that $20.5 million cap, things and all that good stuff moving forward. So I think that's a good sign as well. Moving to the transfer portal, kind of we talked about Sam Levitt getting all these offers, and that was the same thing with Avery Johnson, especially when the whole Tennessee incident happened. But the portal isn't directly addressed, of course, but let's be honest, it's all connected. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
The portal's being used like an ATM. Players just enter it and test the NIL market and then come back. We just had that happen with one of our basketball players. He left to the portal and is back right in Kansas State because the portal wasn't nice to him. This order cuts off the biggest reasons players keep bouncing. And that's money, Richie. You take away the silent auction, because that's kind of what it is. It's a silent auction. You stabilize rosters, at least in theory, and you're going to have a roster size as well moving into the next season. So you get a little bit more structure. Maybe the portal will be less active, less busy, might not be as exciting in the offseason, but you're going to have a lot more. And I guess the buzzword of today's episode is structure heading onto these rosters.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best way to look at that, is creating any kind of structure. Again, all in theory, it could blow up, but hopefully putting these kind of parameters in place now at a federal level, not just at a collegiate level, should help. And I also love that you point out it's not just about the football and the basketball. It is about the sports that universities are willing to sacrifice. And that's really sad, that you would get to a point that you would be willing to ditch a program because it's not going to fetch you the money that you need it to, and you're trying to cut corners and be able to fund some of your bigger programs. And that happens. And I know that's one of the things that Arizona State really prides themselves on is they have everything off. There's over 20 different sports for men's and women's athletics to be offered. Like they have a hockey team that's really good. They have a rugby team. They've got swim and dive. They've got everything. They have just about everything that you could want, and that's not normal. And as much as ASU prides himself off that, there is a chance that that could go away one day, and I hope that's not the case.
I'm with you 100%. Sounds like it's a good thing for Arizona State. I think it's all upside for Kansas State. I'll tell you that and much more on the other side right here on this Locked On College Crossover. But first, Richie, let's talk about today's sponsor, and that is FanDuel. With summer sports in full swing, and it's just an exciting time for baseball, golf, you name it, baseball under the lights, golf on the green, high-stakes soccer action. FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. Hey, we just had a crazy trade in baseball yesterday. Josh Naylor going from the Diamondbacks to the Seattle Mariners. We're going to see some win-loss totals change after this trade deadline happens in a couple of days. Some exciting stuff. With those win-loss totals, you can hop on FanDuel and change them up. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh. I love the interface of FanDuel. A lot of things to be excited about. With the Sun Devils, what do you think about those Diamondbacks? What's the over-under on how many players they're going to sell? I don't know if FanDuel has that one, but there's definitely something you should pay attention to, Richie.
They might have a prop for just about everything. That's why I love FanDuel. It's my go-to. That's for sure. It should be your go-to.
Absolutely. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's continue this conversation real quick. Then let's get into fall camp. This interesting conversation about the executive order that Donald Trump added. You already talked about how great of an impact it is for Arizona State at the end of that last segment. Let me tell you why I think it's all upside for Kansas State. I think Kansas State doesn't rely on mega booster NIL deals, right? You don't get to see that for Kansas State. So this structure, I think, helps. The culture is built on development, not flash. One of my biggest takeaways that I've continued to talk about is I don't care how many stars some of these players that Chris Kleiman and his coaching staff brings in, because he's so good at finding fit. And we've seen that year after year with these rosters ever since he's been the head coach here. And you're not getting that from just having a big NIL budget. So I'm really glad that this can help even the playing field, really, with a team like Kansas State, who, hate to say it, is probably middle class, mid-major when it comes to the Big 12, like right in the middle when it comes to NIL. So they won't have to also cut sports or overextend budgets. There was some talks about maybe not spending enough in basketball because you had to focus on football because they're closer in competitiveness. And I don't think you have to worry about that. And of course, limits on pay for play level in the recruiting field. Already having some great success in the state of Texas right now. You can't win the Big 12 without recruiting strong in the state of Texas. Well, maybe you could say otherwise after it happened last year, Richie, but at least that's my take on there. I think it's all upside for Kansas State. Any other rebuttals or any other thoughts on Sun Devils before we move on to fall camp?
Nope. Texas is important, man. We got the whole hashtag Texas to Tempe movement. A lot of our best players are from Texas. So you recruit from Texas. Their 3 stars are 4 stars elsewhere.
Yeah, I hear you there. If you're a fan of tradition, competitive balance, doing things the right way, I think this is the step in the right direction. Speaking of step in the right direction, Richie, the way to get right is to get yourself prepared for week 0, in your case, week 1. And that starts in fall camp. And obviously fall camp starts this week for Kansas State. We're well into it with both these teams, with Big 12 teams. We're seeing it all over the place. And this is where it starts to get fun. This is when we start to really finally get the taste of knowing that college football is right around the corner. We're less than 30 days until the college football season starts in Dublin between Kansas State and Iowa State. That starts August 23rd. We're talking on July 25th. So lots of exciting things to talk about here. Let's get into fall camp, though. Let's talk about what are some of like the biggest takeaways, because the Locked On Network, the preseason poll for the Big 12, I'll put it up real quick, has Arizona State and Kansas State as 1 and 2. So meaning we predict both our teams right here to be in Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. How does that happen, Richie? How does that happen? The Arizona State returns and Kansas State gets there. I want to ask you on the Sun Devils side, what position battle are you focused on to make a more, maybe have a make or break season for Arizona State this year?
What's so interesting about Arizona State is the fact that you just return basically everything. But there are some positions that are missing more than others. An example, wide receiver. Jordan Tyson is back. Jordan Tyson is one of the best receivers in college football. Everything else is basically brand new. Derek Eusebio is back. He had 1 catch last year. Malik McLean is back. He had 2 catches last year. A lot of the other guys are true freshmen. Then you have transfers, Noble Johnson from Clemson, Jalen Moss from Fresno State, Jaron Hamilton from Alabama. There's not a lot of familiarity in this receiving room right now, which for one, if we ever had some kind of player props in college football one day, you would take the over on Jordan Tyson's receptions, whatever they are. It could be 150. You'd take the over. They're going to throw the ball to him this year. But it'll be really interesting to see how the receiver room works out. But I know a lot of ASU fans are paying attention to running back because you have to replace the People's running back, Cam Scadaboo, who's in the pros now. They bring in Kanye Udo from Army. He's more than likely your starter. Kyson Brown is going into his 3rd year. Raleek Brown appears to be 100% healthy. Jason Brown is a redshirt freshman now. He dropped about 15 pounds to get back closer to 200 to get to a little more of a scat back role. There's a lot of guys in the running back room. And for any Moneyball fans, that's the way that ASU has to approach it. We can't replace Cam Scadaboo, but we can replace him in the aggregate. We can replace the numbers. You can't replace the player. So running back is going to be really interesting. That's going to have a lot of the people's attention. Keep an eye on the receivers. On defense, it's really just replacing roles more than anything. You have to replace Caleb McCullough at linebacker, who had a lot of playing time. You're going to collectively do that. You have to replace Shamari Simmons, who was your top safety and played a lot of nickel last year. You're going to have some guys step up and fill those roles. So I expect a lot of rotation for just about all those positions. But everyone who watches ASU is going to be looking to see how they replace Cam Scadaboo.
I'll tell you what, I think Billy Bean might be commuting from Arizona State to Kansas State going back and forth because I'm the same way with you when it comes to this running back room. I think that you can't replace BJ Giddens, but I think you can do it in the aggregate. And I think there's 3 running backs on the roster for Kansas State that can do so with Dylan Edwards, Joe Jackson, and potentially Antonio Martin as well. I'm excited about Antonio Martin. I think he's going to be one of those guys that, before the air, we were talking about James Cook with the Buffalo Bills scoring all those touchdowns. I think Antonio Martin could be one of those goal line kind of touchdown guys. Like maybe not be all the flashy kind of dudes, but maybe be one of those touchdown kind of guys. I'm really excited for the running back room. I think Dylan Edwards, there's no position battle, if you will, but I just trying to see like the performance of where they're going to be, maybe find out like how much percentage we might see from Dylan Edwards, Joe Jackson, from Antonio Martin. Are we going to see Dylan Edwards get outside more, maybe play more of a non-traditional running back, maybe play slot, other positions, because he can do so. So I'm really excited from that. You brought up wide receiver. We have Jace Brown back. To your Tyson, we have Jace Brown as our returning top wide receiver. And then that's it. Then everything else is really transfer portal additions. They bring in size with Chibbs and Bradley, 6'3", 6'4", but that is all new. And how Avery Johnson's going to be able to excel with that is your guess is as good as mine. I think it's going to be successful because what we've seen from Avery Johnson, what his progression has been this offseason, how great he looks. I mean, best shape of my life season is definitely happening for the Kansas State Wildcats, finding himself in the 23-mile-an-hour club and put on 16 pounds. Like a lot of exciting things from Avery Johnson that could be seen as, we've had this conversation in the past, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the conference. I'll say one of, just for the sake of the respect of this conversation today. So there's a lot of things to be excited about. I'm going to add one more into that. You kind of went to the defensive side. I'm going to stick offense. We just got some news about potentially George Fitzpatrick, our new transfer portal addition, not he has some sort of medical issue and he might not be ready. At media days just a few weeks ago, they were talking about how he already worked to become the top left tackle on the depth chart after coming into the spring. And it sounds like he might not be ready now for week 0. We'll see what happens. There's not a lot of amplifying details. I don't want to speculate, but that means there is a glaring need potentially at left tackle. And that's not the position on the offensive line you want to have question marks going into week 0, especially when week 0 is against Iowa State. It's not against some FCS school, which, of course, that's what you normally do, but that's not the case this year. So a lot of glaring questions on the offense, although I'm super excited about the offense this year for Kansas State. Talking about FCS, I didn't want to say cupcake, but there are some cupcake schedules that we need to address. Don't
Indiana.
worry. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Don't worry. It's not Arizona State. It's not Kansas State. But let me tell you why the Big 12 is doing it right. Actually, Richie, you'll help me with this as well. Right here on this Locked On College Crossover. Let's finish strong here. Brent McMurphy of On3 put this tweet out the other day, and I saved it because I saved it. It came out a couple days ago, but I saved it for this conversation, Richie, because I thought there would be no better person to have this kind of scrum with. And this is what it says. 6 Big Ten teams do not play any non-conference power teams this season. 6. And let me name the 6. You already mentioned one before we got to break there. Indiana, Northwestern, Maryland, Penn State, Rutgers, and Washington. Now, for the record, the Big Ten did do a media poll. They have Penn State as number 1. I do think Penn State's going to be a very good football team this year, but they don't play a non-conference power team this season. Now, for the record, Big Ten does play 9 league games, just like the Big 12 does. So at least they have that going for them.
SEC.
When you're talking, exactly, this is where I'm going here. When you're talking about these conferences that like to call themselves the Power 2, you have one.
It's just different.
You have one that has half their conference that won't play a power team outside their conference and non-conference. And then you have another one that won't play 9 conference games. And then they also play cupcakes, those FCSs.
Late in the season.
In November. You don't hear that happening from the Big 12 teams. You hear teams, like Arizona State, who play a power conference team in their non-con, and Mississippi State this year. And then you hear Kansas State playing a Big 12 team for their non-conference team in Arizona, although it's Arizona, who I think we all think is going to be towards the bottom this year. But that doesn't change the fact that they are a power team. Richie, what's your take on this whole situation? And why is the Big 12 just doing it better?
I mean, at the end of the day, we're getting to a point where getting into the college football playoff is going to be more about your record than anything else, right? We get to a point where it's going to be 24 teams, which is what the FCS does. And I do think that is inevitable, right, wrong, or indifferent. You're going to want to be a double-digit win team. And if that means you schedule 3 FCS opponents for 3 easy wins, then some programs are going to do that. But that's not what makes college football so much fun. It's having the out-of-conference games. Like, I can be excited about ASU and Kansas State, right? But
Sure.
When it's ASU Michigan, right, there's so much more intrigue there.
Baylor,
we
Auburn.
don't see Michigan.
That's going to be a fun game.
Baylor, Auburn, exactly. The week 1 this year has Ohio State, Texas. Yes. Why don't we have more of that? Like, that's the games that college football fans frankly deserve. And instead you have these tune-up games is what they'll call them at best, but we have it literally on our little to-do list here is it's a cupcake game. And that's exactly what those are, is you just want to go around and beat these teams around the yard, and it's not fun. Christian, I'll tell you what, I love my college football 25 and 26. Love those games. At some point on college football 25, for whatever reason, granted, I'm in like the 2040 season when this happens, but they do away with conference games. But I'm still in the Big 12, but I only get 2 conference games a year. The rest of that I get to control. I could have done tons of FCS teams. Instead, I would go out of my way and find the 5 stars, the 4 stars, the teams that are ranked, because that's more fun for me. And it's a chance to prove myself, right? Why would I want to play a bunch of programs that just simply don't stack up to me? Like, it is fun, right? When Appalachian State does take down Michigan, that stuff is awesome. But we should have so much more emphasis on the bigger profile games. And you would also think that as you get down to expanding the playoffs and everything, that you want marquee matchups on there. You would think that Alabama doesn't want to play the Citadel when they should be scheduling a game against Penn State instead. Higher profile game. It's just really frustrating that you have programs that don't value out of conference games like Indiana, and then you have the SEC, which prides itself so much. I've heard arguments from SEC people that say, well, we deserve it. We deserve a 4th out of conference game. We deserve a cupcake game in November because we're beating each other up so much. And it's like, oh my God, I've never met a conference that loves to smell their own farts the way that the SEC does. Like, it's just crazy to me. Just crazy to me, Christian.
There's not as much parity in any of those conferences than the Big 12. So you
Nope.
talk about teams beating themselves up, then that should be our line, and we don't even use that. So, there was one comment on social media. I don't know if it was like quote tweeted or commented. I can't remember when this popped up from McMurphy here, and I thought it was super interesting. And I don't know if I agree with it, but I think it's worth a discussion. With college basketball, they have obviously a bigger schedule, and there's 300-something teams in the mix.
Oh, the tournaments?
Well, I wouldn't go with tournaments, but the way that they, rank the strength of schedules is they use quadrant wins. Do you think that's something that might come into play or should come into play with college football? If you're going ahead and you're scheduling Mercer, or you're making sure that you schedule, UMass as one of your, mid-major teams instead of scheduling Kansas State or scheduling a team in the Power 4, that win should obviously not count as much. When you get to the college football committee towards that end of the season, when they start ranking them up, they could even be in that model right now, but should they make that more public where, they have a quad 1 win, which might be considered a top 40 win or something in college football when it's the 130 something teams? Do you think that's something that they should consider?
I mean, I would love it. And I think that would also drive a lot of more conversations to be had. Because when you do see that a team just went 12-0, it's like, okay, well, let's look at their schedule. And it's like, oh, well, look at that. They had 3 out of conference games that were against bad programs. And then they played a bunch of other teams that simply just were not good. Like, without throwing shade at our Big 12 friends down in Orlando, UCF, the self-proclaimed national champions because they went 12-0, they were not in a Power 5 conference at the time. And guess what? If you played Alabama, who did win the championship that year, they would have put their foot on your throat, and they'd have to put the mercy rule in. Like, it's different. And that's the reason as well why it took so long for a G5 school to get to the 4-team playoff. Cincinnati had to go like 23-1 over a 2-year stretch to barely get into the playoff. Like, that stuff should matter a lot. It really, really should. And if you made that available for people to look at, and for the talking heads and the pundits and everyone that has a podcast to take a look at, hey, Arizona State has two top 40 wins this year. That's more impressive than Alabama's 3 top 100 wins. Like, it feels like that would be something that if we had more access to it, we might be able to have stronger conversations about those things. But instead, we look and we go, oh, 12-0. They're a playoff team.
Yeah, I think we need to find a way to make that more of a talking point, and maybe we should, and maybe we will on our podcast for this upcoming season, because we all know for a fact that Arizona State didn't have anything given to them last year, and they found themselves in the college football playoffs, but they were the only one from the Big 12 doing so. because people didn't give them enough credit towards the beginning of the season because us as the Big 12 ranked them at the bottom. That's why we got away with the Big 12 preseason poll from the media side of things. It didn't help UIU either. They didn't find themselves into the college football playoffs, although they should have. Looking at USMU, there's a lot of things that should have happened for the playoffs last year that I don't think is going to happen this year. And meanwhile, you're seeing 6 teams from the Big 10 not play non-conference power games, power schools, you see Arizona
That's almost
State.
half your conference.
Yeah, you're seeing Arizona State, Kansas State. We can talk about all the other teams in the Big 12 doing the same thing, playing nine conference games, plus, in our case, for Kansas State, a Big 12 opponent as a non-conference game. You're playing an SEC opponent as a non-conference, of course, power team, of course. And we start the season against the conference opponent. So I don't want to hear it if you're saying that the Big 12 has cupcake schedule, because you just have no room to talk about it, to me at least. So if you're going to try,
no,
I recommend you debate a door.
Yeah.
Richie?
I mean, that's the nicest way you can put it, my man, because I can appreciate Indiana. I thought they were a great story last year. I think it's absolutely insane that and I love Kurt Signetti, but he's doing a lot of barking for a team that took advantage of a bad schedule last year and is going to take advantage of another bad schedule this year. They are a good team. They are. I love Indiana. You'll find me rooting for them. But doing a whole lot of barking over there for someone whose strength of schedule has to be near the bottom half or the bottom third, bottom quarter of all Power 4 teams. It's a pathetic schedule. In the Big 10, which is one of the Power 2, right? So, yeah, whatever.
Richie, I think we'll at least have one more conversation before the season starts. And of course, we'll have to talk again before we most likely see each other in Arlington. But where can everyone else find you on Locked On Sun Devils?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Richie Brads36. That's Brads with a Z. Podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Locked On Sun Devils is available free wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're closing in on 2,000 subscribers. You want to hit that subscribe button, go for it. But you can always just hit me up. I'm here to talk ball.
You sure are. And I love having these conversations with you. And I'm sure there'll be more to talk about in the coming weeks. Week 0 is right around the corner. We are less than 30 days away. Farmageddon's going to be great. You get a first taste of what the Big 12 season is going to look like from your couch, but that's okay. Lots of things to be excited about. Please like the video. Please subscribe. This has been a Locked On College Crossover.